How nice that you tuned in again today. Today we're talking about a topic that I find extremely fascinating because a lot of people don't even think that something like this exists. Namely, it's about caffeine withdrawal. Hello, I'm Dr. Petra Bracht. I'm a nutritionist. Yes, and I'd be happy if you give me a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel, but of course only after you've watched this amazing video. Could you imagine going without coffee for a while? Because you often hear that coffee might not actually be that good for you and that you should try out how you feel without it. Honestly, I could totally understand if you didn't feel like doing it. Because at least 35% of those who quit coffee from one day to the next can experience severe headaches, nausea, really depressed moods, sleep disturbances, digestive problems, and even vomiting. But what is the reason for this if Germany's most popular drink can be responsible for such symptoms? Well, what is it actually that leads to such symptoms? It's the caffeine in coffee. Caffeine is now it gets exciting, a psychoactive substance. You also know it from other things you can take to get in a good mood. By the way, this caffeine spreads throughout the entire body within 30 minutes after drinking coffee. And what happens then is that due to the release of caffeine in the body, the stress hormones cortisol and adrenaline are released even more. And that actually leads to a stimulating effect on the entire central nervous system, which causes, as you know, the blood vessels to constrict. You don't feel that, but your pulse goes up. That's something you can feel, for example. For example, your blood pressure rises, and as a result, your entire metabolism increases, and the overall blood flow in your body increases as well. That means the body feels much more energized, and as a result, all the cells are supplied with more oxygen, and the person is awakened. That's also the reason why there are many people who say they need coffee to wake up. Or he also goes into flight or fight mode, so already into a certain stressful situation. And since coffee causes both physical and psychological dependence, that's just how it is, a recreational drug. And like with all drugs, the body not only wants a regular supply, but also an ever-increasing dose. Because the brain has gotten used to it, and the caffeine becomes less and less effective. That's the reason why when you start drinking coffee, you might begin with just 1 cup. And if you keep going like that, suddenly you might find yourself drinking a whole pot, maybe even 2 pots. And there are a lot of people who also have trouble sleeping. And that can be because the caffeine can take up to 20 hours to be broken down. So there's something called a half-life, which varies a lot. It's said to be between 4, 8, or even 10 hours. That means that during this time, half of the caffeine is broken down. So it can definitely happen that it takes up to 20 hours for the last bit of caffeine to leave the body. And that makes falling asleep and even sleeping in general not exactly easy for people who are very, very sensitive to it. And since caffeine artificially stimulates you, your activity level naturally drops a little more over time. And so the energy is only temporary, only as long as the caffeine is present in a high dose, more like borrowed. And if you don't get enough rest, you end up relying more and more on coffee just to stay productive. And since it's well known that coffee drinkers often suffer from sleep disturbances, if you really want to keep drinking coffee, you should only have it in the morning at most. That means until 12 o'clock and not any later. What if you really love drinking coffee? Is there a solution? Of course there is. I'm also someone who used to drink coffee and really liked it, but I've mostly said goodbye to it. I love smelling coffee, but I also really like having a coffee in the morning. And that's why I've found my solution by treating myself to an organically decaffeinated coffee. And it's organically decaffeinated because the raw coffee beans are then treated with steam and carbon monoxide. And the latter, meaning carbon monoxide, binds the caffeine and then it simply remains behind in its pure form. And we don't absorb it. But be careful with conventional methods. On the one hand, steam is also used in conventional methods, but then the beans are soaked in the solvent dichloromethane, which, by the way, is suspected of being carcinogenic. So if you're drinking decaffeinated coffee, really make sure that it's organic coffee. But there's another option. How about a completely healthy coffee substitute, for example? Why not try lupin coffee? It really tastes almost like regular coffee and is completely caffeine-free. It's less acidic and is also produced locally. And above all, it's also healthy because it's made from lupin. And lupin is a legume. And as you know, legumes are a real treasure for our gut. And maybe you're wondering, what about tea? What about that? So in general, herbal teas are always fine because they don't contain any caffeine at all. But what about black tea, green tea, and white tea? Those actually contain theine, which is also caffeine, but much less than in coffee. That's why these teas are less stimulating. It also depends on how it's prepared. But I'll talk about that in another video of mine. Yes, I hope you learned something new. Maybe you want to know if you are one of the 35% who can actually experience caffeine withdrawal if they quit coffee from one day to the next. I chose this topic because I know it's been ages since I fasted, and I really thought, okay, I'll give up coffee now. And then I actually experienced caffeine withdrawal. And it was so intense that I started looking into it a bit more. And I think you should know this information too. That's why I'm making this video today. Of course, I'm happy if you give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And I'm even happier if you share this video. And I'm sure some of you know exactly what I was talking about. How about you and your coffee enjoyment? How many cups do you drink? Have you noticed that you might have sleep problems because of it? Or have you ever experienced caffeine withdrawal? Everything you need is down below and you can write it in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me today. You can find more from me right here. I mean videos, of course. And otherwise, stay healthy. Maybe try it without coffee until next time. Until then, bye.